Alright, let's strip away the hype and get real. Truth has a way of shaking things up even when those things seem untouchable. This isn't some fairy tale, it's about how one victory can trigger a chain reaction that reaches the highest levels of power. Imagine a single case so significant that it forces federal investigators to step in, not just to deal with individuals, but to dismantle entire systems. That's not just a win, it's a game changer. Your victory didn't just close a chapter. It demanded the attention of those who usually chase down cartels and billion-dollar fraudsters. This is how monumental the impact of your truth resonated. So here are some things you need to know. This isn't just about celebration. This is about understanding the magnitude of what you've accomplished. Think about the weight of that truth. The deep downfall of the opposition. They once felt untouchable, hiding behind influence and manipulation. Now you are the twist in their story. What was once a joke has turned into pleading, begging for mercy in rooms with no cameras, no witnesses. Prepare yourself, because this isn't just about winning. It's about watching justice crash through their dinner party, flipping the table and declaring, "Case closed." Number one, your win exposed the rot at the core of their entire operation. This wasn't just a personal victory, it was a seismic event that shook the very foundations they stood on. For years, they built a fortress of intimidation, influence, and manipulation, making it seem invincible. But your case was like a wrecking ball, tearing away the facade and revealing the ugly mold beneath. The feds didn't step in solely for you. They intervened because the whole corrupt edifice was on the verge of collapse. It's the kind of victory that exposes the fragility of power built on lies. Think of it like this: they thrived on fear, on turning a blind eye on the belief that the little guy could never win. But the moment the truth became undeniable, their entire network of protection crumbled. The very system they thought would shield them was forced to investigate them. That's more than just losing, it's exposure. It showed that what they built was unsustainable. They thrived on secrecy, bending rules and exploiting loopholes. When you stood your ground, the cracks widened, revealing the rot at the foundation. The feds came because your case threatened the very essence of justice. And here's the kicker. They weren't just exposed to the public, they were exposed to themselves. For the first time, they had to confront the reality that their world was hollow, not strong. Their power was an illusion dependent on manipulation. Stripped of that, they were left with nothing but guilt, fear, and the consequences of their actions. Your win proved that power without integrity is a ticking time bomb, and when it detonates, it shakes entire systems to their core. That's exactly what your case did. Number two, their power was an illusion until your case shattered it. Think about this: for years they walked around like giants, fueled by influence, fear, and the ability to silence anyone who dared to cross them. They appeared untouchable, with every angle covered. But when the dust settled, their so-called power turned out to be smoke and mirrors. Your victory tore through the performance, revealing that their control was nothing more than an act. People bought into the illusion for years, convinced that their reach was endless, that consequences didn't apply, and to some extent it worked. People were too scared to question it. But the second real accountability entered the room, the act collapsed. Those who seemed larger than life were reduced to scrambling, contradicting themselves, and begging for deals. The illusion only worked as long as no one dared to push back. The moment you did, the mask slipped. Real strength is tested under pressure, and they failed miserably. Every lie, every false layer of power came crashing down when the truth stacked against them. That's the difference between illusion and reality. Illusion is fragile, reality endures. They had been performing for so long that even they started believing their own lies. The exposure cut deep because they weren't prepared to see how small they really were without their tricks. Now those who once feared them see them for what they always were. Weak, desperate, and dependent on manipulation to feel powerful. Once that curtain was pulled back, there was no going back to the image they worked so hard to protect. Your case was about justice, but it was also about tearing down a false empire. Their power didn't just fade. It dissolved when your victory proved they never had any real power to begin with. Number 3, your survival became federal evidence. It's the kind of twist no one saw coming. Everything they tried to use to destroy you ended up turning against them. The scars, the silence, the resilience, all the things they thought were weaknesses became undeniable proof of what really happened. You didn't just survive, you carried the receipts in your body, your story, your persistence, and your ability to still stand when they expected you to be gone. That was the evidence no one could erase. When the feds stepped in, they weren't just looking at files and reports. They were looking at the fact that you had survived every attempt to erase you, and that survival alone confirmed something bigger was at play. They couldn't cover it up anymore. The endurance you carried became a trail of truth, one they couldn't ignore. In a way, your life became the strongest testimony in the entire case. Documents can be altered, witnesses can be coached, but survival doesn't lie. It speaks for itself. That's why your presence became heavier than any courtroom argument. Every day you showed up still breathing, still speaking, still refusing to back down was another nail in the coffin of their lies. Your existence itself countered everything they claimed. They wanted to label you broken, but all they did was prove you were unbreakable. This unshakable presence made it impossible for the case to be dismissed as rumor. The survival they mocked became the very thing that brought their downfall. They thought you being alive meant they had gotten away with it, but it meant their crimes had a witness they could never silence. Survival was your evidence, and that evidence forced the kind of justice they never thought they'd face. They couldn't erase you, so the system had no choice but to erase them. That's how your survival became the final proof that closed the case. Number 4, justice didn't just side with you, it needed you. Most people don't realize that the system isn't perfect. Laws and rules exist, but without someone willing to push the truth forward, the machinery of justice can grind to a halt or bend under pressure. Your fight didn't just force a verdict, it forced the system to confront what it had been ignoring, compromising on, and risking if left unchecked. The courts didn't simply deliver a judgment in your favor. They were compelled to act because your case exposed gaps, corruption, and moral shortcuts that threatened the integrity of justice. Every move you made, every piece of evidence you preserved, every ounce of resilience you demonstrated became the leverage the system needed to recalibrate itself. Your courage didn't just protect you, it forced the gears of law and accountability to turn in the right direction. Without your relentless pursuit, those gaps might have remained hidden, and the wrong people might have continued walking free while the system slowly corroded from within. In a way, your battle became the correction the justice system itself desperately needed to avoid complete moral bankruptcy. It wasn't about luck, influence, or timing, it was about necessity. The system needed someone who wouldn't bend, someone whose presence and truth would demand action. Your fight became the standard against which the integrity of the entire process was measured. Every objection they tried to use, every lie they attempted to slip through only highlighted how indispensable your role had become. You weren't just a participant. You were the pivot point that ensured the scales of justice didn't tip irreparably. In the end, the victory wasn't just yours, it was a victory for the system too, because you forced it to live up to its purpose. By standing firm, by refusing to be silenced, you didn't just win your case, you restored the balance that had been threatened. Justice needed you to survive, to fight, and to prove that accountability was not negotiable. Number 5, their reputation wasn't destroyed by rumors but by receipts. For years they relied on whispers, on the idea that people wouldn't talk, that stories could be controlled, that perception could outweigh reality. They built a fortress of gossip, hoping that if no one saw the truth wouldn't matter. But rumors are fragile, and your case proved that facts are relentless. It wasn't the chatter behind closed doors that broke them. It was the evidence, the documents, the undeniable proof of what actually happened. Every text, every email, every record, every witness, each one stacked on top of the other until the weight was unbearable. They had no escape route, no spin, no excuse that could withstand the sheer volume of reality pointing at them. Their reputation crumbled because the truth became undeniable and public. What makes this even more extraordinary is how methodical the undoing was. Nothing happened by accident. Their web of manipulation was dismantled piece by piece, and each piece was documented in ways they never anticipated. The very tools they used to control perception became the chains that held them accountable. They tried to outrun reality, but reality doesn't have a back door and receipts don't lie. In the end, what destroyed them wasn't noise or opinion. It was the weight of truth they thought they could bury. Every attempt to maintain a pristine image failed because facts have a stubborn way of catching up. And while they once believed they could manipulate how people saw them, your victory turned their own history into a record of exposure. Their reputation didn't die quietly. It collapsed under the unavoidable pressure of evidence, leaving nothing but the truth standing in stark contrast to every lie they ever told. Their downfall was absolute, complete, and public, and it happened not because of stories, but because reality finally got its day in court. Number 6, your case turned into a mirror for every hidden predator, reflecting everything they hoped would stay in the shadows. It wasn't just about one trial or one verdict. It became a demonstration of what happens when someone refuses to be silenced, intimidated, and to allow lies to stay unchallenged. Every person who thought their actions could remain secret, every manipulator who assumed the world wouldn't notice now, had to face the reality that someone was watching, recording, and willing to fight. Your courage became the standard by which others' accountability could no longer be avoided. This case sent a message that went far beyond the courtroom. It said that abuse, corruption, and exploitation are no longer invisible. It showed that systems, no matter how complicated or well hidden, are vulnerable when someone refuses to back down. Every predator who had assumed immunity suddenly saw themselves in your story, and they saw how quickly the tables could turn. They realized that the same attention, the same investigative focus could land on them at any time. It was a wake-up call written in the harshest terms. No one is untouchable. What made this even more powerful was how it exposed the network around the predators. People who enabled, covered for, or ignored wrongdoing were forced to reconsider their positions. The ripple effect of your case reached far beyond what most would imagine. It created a climate of accountability that forced everyone in the shadows to recognize the risk of exposure. They could no longer act with confidence that their actions would go unnoticed or unpunished. Your case didn't just bring justice to you. It illuminated the darkness where others hid. It became a warning shot, a precedent, and a mirror all at once. Those who thrived in secrecy now had to measure themselves against the standard of your courage. Number 7, the victory hurt more than prison time. Here's why what they truly feared wasn't a sentence or confinement. It was the collapse of their carefully constructed image. For years, they built themselves up as untouchable, as someone above consequences, someone whose influence could bend rules and silence critics. They relied on perception, on the aura of power to intimidate and control. Losing that image was like having their very identity ripped apart. Prison fines or legal penalties are temporary. But the shattering of their reputation, the public confirmation that their power was nothing but smoke and mirrors, left a wound that could never fully heal. Every person who once looked up to them, feared them, or followed them began to see the truth. The illusion of invincibility crumbled, and with it their authority, their confidence, and their ability to manipulate others. That public exposure was far more punishing than bars could ever be, because it attacked the one thing they had always depended on: perception. People don't just judge actions, they judge the power behind them. When that power evaporated, what remained was a person exposed, vulnerable, and unable to hide behind the same walls of influence that once protected them. The psychological impact was enormous. Their pride, arrogance, and sense of control were replaced by shame, fear, and desperation. Every interaction, every look, every whispered conversation became a reminder of their fall. They were no longer the untouchable figure they had projected. They were a cautionary tale for anyone who had believed in their invincibility. This is why your victory resonated so deeply. It wasn't just a legal win, it was a symbolic reckoning. Prison sentences end, but reputations once destroyed shape how the world treats someone for the rest of their life. Your victory didn't just punish them legally, it rewrote their legacy. Number 8, you forced silence to break its contract. For years, so many around them stayed quiet, pretending not to see, pretending not to hear, and pretending not to know. That silence wasn't passive. It was an unspoken agreement that allowed abuse, corruption, and manipulation to thrive. people believed that if they didn't speak, they could protect themselves, or worse, that silence would somehow protect the abuser. But your case shattered that arrangement completely. The quiet that once shielded them from accountability became a trap, and every voice that had been restrained suddenly had to confront what was real. The power of your fight wasn't just in proving the truth, it was in forcing others to confront theirs. Witnesses, allies, and even passive onlookers could no longer remain in the comfort of silence. You didn't just win a case, you broke a system that relied on secrecy. By standing up, by refusing to be muted, you created a space where the unspoken could no longer be ignored. That kind of rupture is transformative. Once silence is broken, it can never return in the same way. People who had stayed in the shadows now had to speak or live with the guilt of their complicity. Your courage forced the walls of fear and denial to crack, and when they did, it wasn't just about exposing the abuser. It was about reclaiming integrity for everyone who had been trapped by quiet compliance. Your victory proved a simple but devastating truth. Silence only has power when it's allowed to operate unchecked. The moment someone refuses to accept it, the illusion collapses. You didn't just speak. You dismantled a contract that had bound people to inaction, fear, and complicity. And in doing so, you didn't just win for yourself. You forced the system, the community, and every observer to recognize that the cost of staying quiet is far higher than the risk of speaking up. Number 9. Their end wasn't just legal, it was spiritual bankruptcy. The courtroom ruling was the final seal on something that had been building far beyond the walls of law. It was the inevitable consequence of everything they had put out into the world finally catching up with them. Their influence, their manipulations, their attempts to dominate and control were all forms of energy they spent recklessly, and in the end, that energy had nothing left to sustain them. The system simply reflected what had already been written in spirit. Their currency of power, trust, and moral authority had been completely depleted. Every lie, every deception, every act of intimidation wasn't just breaking the law. It was eroding the very foundation of who they were at the core. They traded integrity for control, authenticity for fear, and compassion for manipulation. Eventually, that deficit couldn't be hidden. And when it met the undeniable truth of your victory, the exposure didn't just punish them legally. It revealed a deeper collapse. They were bankrupt not in finances or influence alone, but in the fundamental energy that defines a person's spirit. This is why the impact of your case goes beyond headlines or legal records. The system delivered justice, yes, but it was also a reflection of cosmic balance, a statement that what had been drained, wasted, and corrupted could no longer maintain its illusion of life. They lost far more than a trial. They lost credibility, moral weight, and the invisible force that had allowed them to believe they were untouchable. Your victory didn't just close a case. It exposed a spiritual emptiness that cannot be faked or restored. And the haunting truth for them is that no court, no pardon, no appeal can replenish what they spent so carelessly. The system enforced the law, but the universe had already written the verdict long before their essence had run dry. That's why their fall resonates so profoundly. It's not only a story of legal defeat, it's proof that actions drain the soul, and when that energy is fully spent, the collapse is absolute. Number 10. You made corruption fearful of its own reflection. The moment your case came to light, the people who had grown comfortable in their manipulation cover-ups and shady dealings suddenly had to look in the mirror and face the truth about themselves. They realized that the same reckoning you faced could land on them at any moment. Your battle didn't just target the individual wrongdoers. It sent tremors through everyone who had relied on secrecy and influence to get away with wrongdoing. The fear wasn't just about legal consequences. It was the awareness that their own misdeeds could be exposed with the same relentlessness and clarity. What makes this extraordinary is how it disrupted the ecosystem of corruption. People who once acted with impunity started second-guessing every decision, every connection, every choice that had previously felt untouchable. Your case became a mirror not just for the main offenders, but for anyone who had thrived in the shadows, thinking their actions would never be scrutinized. Suddenly, their confidence was shaken and the illusion of invulnerability began to crumble. The ripple effect is profound. Corruption survives on uncertainty, the certainty that no one is watching, no one will speak up, and consequences will be avoided. Your courage and persistence eliminated that certainty. By refusing to be silenced and by ensuring the truth was undeniable, you forced even the most hardened manipulators to confront the possibility that they could be next. Every corrupt system relies on momentum and complacency. You disrupted both. Number 11, justice didn't arrive late. It arrived loud. People like to complain that the system moves slowly, that it drags its feet while the guilty continue to operate unchecked. Your case proved that timing isn't weakness, it's precision. Every delay, every obstacle, every pushback wasn't the system failing. It was the moment before the perfect strike. When the hammer fell, it didn't just land quietly behind closed doors. It came down like a thunderclap, rattling everyone who thought they were untouchable, echoing through the very corridors of power that had once shielded them. The loudness of justice wasn't just metaphorical. It was the exposure, the public records, the undeniable proof that no one could ignore. It was the collective acknowledgement that the truth had finally caught up, and there was no escaping it. Every whisper, every attempt to manipulate perception, every lie they counted on to hold them in place was obliterated in that moment. The impact wasn't subtle. It demanded attention. Those who had underestimated the strength of your resolve now had to reckon with the force of the system itself, activated and unstoppable. What makes this moment extraordinary is how it shattered expectations. Justice isn't just about rulings, fines, or sentences. It's about the message sent to anyone watching, anyone complicit, anyone tempted to believe that they could act without consequence. The noise of your victory ensured that this wasn't just a personal triumph. It became a precedent, a public declaration that wrongdoing, no matter how well hidden, will be confronted with full force when the time is right. Number 12. You didn't just close a case, you rewrote history. This wasn't merely about winning a personal battle or seeing justice served in the courtroom. What you accomplished went far beyond that. Your case became a turning point, a line drawn in the sand that changed how abuse, manipulation, and corruption are viewed and addressed. The narrative that once allowed predators to operate with impunity was shattered, replaced by a record of accountability that can't be ignored or erased. You didn't just participate in a legal process, you created a precedent that shifts the story for everyone who comes after. The significance of your victory is in its permanence. Cases like yours don't just resolve individual disputes, they expose systemic flaws, highlight patterns of wrongdoing, and force institutions to confront the gaps they once ignored. Your fight became a blueprint for holding people accountable, proving that silence, fear, and influence are not stronger than truth and resilience. By standing firm, you made it impossible for similar abuses to be treated the same way again. History now remembers not just the crime, but the consequences of trying to hide it. This rewriting of history isn't only about legal records, it's about perception, culture, and awareness. The people who once thought they could act without scrutiny are now permanently altered by your example. Communities, institutions, and even individuals watching have a new understanding. Wrongdoing can and will be exposed, and those responsible will face consequences no matter how powerful they think they are. You transformed what could have been a quiet, forgotten case into a landmark moment that speaks to the broader fight against corruption and abuse. Number 13. They weren't just defeated, they were documented. Their loss didn't vanish quietly into the shadows or get buried under whispers. It was recorded, preserved, and made undeniable. Every action, every lie, every attempt to manipulate or abuse was now part of the official record. Losing to you didn't just bring personal shame. It created a permanent footprint that no apology, influence, or spin could erase. Their names are etched in history alongside the truth of their crimes, leaving a legacy that can never be reclaimed or rewritten. This documentation is what makes their defeat absolute. They might have once believed that power could protect them, that influence could hide them, or that intimidation could silence the truth. But the evidence, the rulings, and the official records tell a story that cannot be contested. Every person who follows that trail sees exactly what happened. Their attempts at control are exposed for what they were: temporary, fragile, and ultimately futile. What makes this even more devastating is the permanence of public record. Unlike fleeting shame or gossip, which fades with time, documentation creates a history that will always exist. The world now has undeniable proof of their actions, and that proof will shape how they are remembered forever. Their names are no longer associated with power, status, or respect. They are tied to wrongdoing, deceit, and accountability. Your victory ensured that their fall wasn't just immediate, it was lasting. Defeat can be forgotten, but documentation immortalizes consequences. Every future reference to their actions will carry the weight of what you uncovered and achieved. Their influence, their facade of control, and their reputation are permanently overshadowed by the truth you brought to light. In defeating them, you didn't just win a battle. You created an unshakable record that guarantees their legacy is stained, undeniable, and remembered exactly as it should be. Number 14. Your victory made them an example, and you were precedent. For them, the ending was humiliation, a public reckoning that stripped away every facade of control, influence, and untouchability they had relied on for so long. Every lie they told, every corner they cut, every manipulation they thought would protect them was exposed in full view. Their downfall wasn't quiet, it was unmistakable, a cautionary tale carved into the record for anyone tempted to follow in their footsteps. They became the living example of what happens when power is abused, and the world watched as their carefully constructed empire crumbled under the weight of truth. For you, the victory was a transformation. You didn't just close a case, you redefined the way justice interacts with resilience and courage. Your refusal to be intimidated, your insistence on truth, and your unwavering persistence became a benchmark for how cases like yours could and should be handled. In standing your ground, you became more than a survivor. You became a precedent. You proved that one person armed with determination and truth can force even the most entrenched system to act. You showed that the machinery of law, influence, and power is not absolute. It bends when confronted by courage that refuses to yield. The duality of your victory is what makes it extraordinary. On one side, there's the humiliation of those who thought themselves untouchable. On the other, there's the elevation of someone who refused to break, who transformed adversity into authority, and who turned a personal fight into a broader statement about accountability. You didn't just win a battle, you set a standard. Your case will be referenced, studied, and remembered as a turning point, proof that persistence, integrity, and courage can bend even the most rigid systems. Their end became a warning. Your triumph became a blueprint. You didn't just win, you changed the rules of the game. You exposed rotten foundations, turned survival into evidence, forced silence to shatter, and made corruption tremble in its own reflection. The system didn't just side with you, it needed you. And when justice finally arrived, it didn't come quietly. It thundered, echoing across every level of power, leaving no room for doubt, manipulation, or escape. Your triumph rewrote history, documented their downfall permanently, and turned their humiliation into a lesson for anyone tempted to believe they are untouchable. You became living proof that one unbroken person can bend systems, expose corruption, and force accountability where none existed before. It declares that power without integrity is fragile, that silence cannot protect abusers forever, and that courage paired with truth has the force to rewrite the rules entirely. Your story is now a precedent, a demonstration that justice, when demanded and earned, doesn't just arrive. It transforms, it echoes, and it leaves the guilty exposed for all to see. Share this with others who need it. You won hard, and in doing so, you changed the game forever. Welcome, esteemed ones. Be mindful of the company you keep. Some individuals carry repercussions you can't afford. Resilient souls, allow me to illustrate. There are those right now trembling in apprehension, not because you raised your voice, not because you resorted to violence, but because they have finally recognized you are not one to be trifled with repeatedly. Apprehension possesses a peculiar dynamic. Scientific evidence even demonstrates that when an individual experiences profound terror, their body secretes a hormone known as cortisol, which literally corrodes them from within. And this is precisely what is transpiring within them at this moment. Their own autonomic system is exacting retribution for their audacity in perceiving you as vulnerable. Herein lies the unforeseen suspense. What they believe to be an innocuous game of duplicity has metamorphosed into a waking nightmare that torments their sleep. And in all candor, it borders on the farcical when one contemplates it. They conspired against you, mocked you, and even wrote you off. Yet now they are incapable of even counting sheep at night without quaking at the prospect of what may befall them. This transcends mere retribution. This is the universe enacting a cautionary tale, instructing them that when they assailed you, they assailed something inviolable, something fortified by cosmic principles. And now they would not even entertain the notion of attempting to provoke you again. The dread they experience is not solely about you. It is about the realization that they are ignorant of when the hammer will fall, only that its descent is already underway. Therefore, listen attentively, because what we are about to unveil will not only explicate why they are trembling, but also why their apprehension is irrefutable evidence that you have already triumphed. Firstly, their apprehension is not of you. It is of what you awaken within them. They are not apprehensive of you because of your capacity for vociferousness or because of any menace you may have articulated. The apprehension emanates from something considerably deeper, something from which they cannot evade, what you stir within their very core. Each time they behold you, hear your appellation, or even contemplate you, their own reflection manifests. And it is not the rendition of themselves that they prefer to exhibit to the world. You need not enumerate their transgressions, for your very existence compels them to confront the shadow they have striven to conceal their entire lives. This is why they tremble. You become the embodiment of everything they desperately seek to keep cloaked. Individuals of this nature subsist on projection. They flourish by imputing blame onto others, pointing accusatory fingers and generating cacophony to obscure the verity of their true selves. However, when they encounter someone who cannot be deceived by this charade, someone whose presence silently exposes them without uttering a single word, it terrifies them because they can no longer elude the inner voice that whispers, "They perceive you." That is the facet they dread, the exposure that does not stem from calumny or reprisal, but from the undeniable aura you emanate that causes dissimulation to crumble upon sight. It is one thing to be disliked. It is an entirely different matter to feel exposed. That is the inherent power you possess even without conscious effort. You need not engage in disputation with them, for your personal evolution already invalidates every falsehood they disseminated about you. You need not offer a rejoinder, for the manner in which you have healed and metamorphosed is irrefutable evidence that their assaults were incapable of halting your progress. And this is precisely why they are uneasy. They can no longer distort this narrative. You are living testament that their account of the story is irrevocably flawed, and they are cognizant that once others perceive you for your authentic self, their entire artifice will come crashing down. The trembling they experience is not a manifestation of weakness, it is panic. It is the realization that you cannot be manipulated, you cannot be provoked, and you cannot be reshaped into their fabrication. And the truth is, regardless of the duration for which they attempt to flee you, have already indelibly imprinted upon their conscience. You have become the mirror they did not solicit, yet one from which they can never avert their gaze. And that particular form of apprehension never dissipates. Secondly, they perceived you as merely flesh, but you moved with the force of law. They presumed you were merely another individual whom they could mistreat, test, or manipulate for their own amusement. In their estimation, you were merely flesh and blood, easily provoked, easily manipulated, someone they could address in the same manner they address all others. What they failed to comprehend is that you do not function on the same plane as ordinary individuals. When they came against you, they were not merely initiating a conflict with a person. They were colliding with a principle, with a spiritual decree that cannot be bent, broken, or suborned. That is why they are now apprehensive, because they perceive that what envelops you is not merely strength of will, but something transcendent that ensures that whatever is perpetrated against you ultimately rebounds upon them. That is what distinguishes you. Human reprisal is predictable. Individuals yell, they retaliate. They divulge secrets, they seek vengeance in ways for which one can prepare. However, with you, there is no formula, no timetable, no safe haven. You need not retaliate, for the law that governs your existence executes the task on your behalf. And this is what they underestimated. They assumed their assaults would land, that their manipulations would endure, that their falsehoods would take root. Instead, every single action they directed against you has metamorphosed into a weight dragging them down. It terrifies them because they now comprehend that you do not engage in equitable combat. Not because you are malevolent, but because you need not even sully your hands. The very essence of your existence realigns circumstances in your favor, irrespective of whether you utter a word. That is why your presence feels oppressive to them. They sense something beyond you that stands sentinel, something that renders it perilous to tamper with your destiny. They can ridicule individuals, mock individuals, even ruin individuals. However, with you, they have realized that the risk is excessively high. That is the apprehension with which they now reside. It is not apprehension of your retaliation. It is apprehension of divine retribution, apprehension of the consequences from which no amount of cunning or manipulation can escape. They are cognizant of what they have perpetrated, and they are cognizant that they have transgressed a boundary that does not easily forgive or forget. They did not merely offend you, they offended the order that surrounds you. And once an individual learns that your existence is shielded by law, not by mere chance, they will never again attempt to provoke you, for to do so is to initiate a conflict with the very forces that maintain the equilibrium of the world. Thirdly, their apprehension stems from the realization that they cannot control the narrative. For those who subsist on deception, control is paramount. They subsist by distorting narratives, portraying themselves as the protagonists while depicting others as the antagonists. They have resided comfortably within a world they constructed from manipulation, where their pronouncements could mold how others perceived reality. However, they have now encountered a truth: they cannot rewrite you. And this is the source of their apprehension. They have realized that regardless of how profusely they fabricate, your existence itself has become incontrovertible evidence. They cannot distort it, they cannot bury it, and they cannot control the narrative any longer. When an individual depends on falsehoods to preserve their image, truth becomes their most formidable adversary. The very fact that you remain standing, thriving, and ascending despite everything they perpetrated renders their account of events absurd. They informed others that you would not succeed, yet here you are. They informed others that you were inconsequential. Yet your personal evolution continues to demonstrate otherwise. And with each step forward, you undertake their meticulously constructed narrative fractures incrementally. That is the kind of exposure for which they never planned. The kind that does not necessitate your words to dismantle their narrative. It terrifies them because once they relinquish control of the narrative, they relinquish power over others. Their falsehoods were only efficacious when others believed them. However, now others are beginning to perceive for themselves. The disparity between who they declared you to be and who you truly are is too conspicuous to disregard. That is why they are restless. It is not merely apprehension of you. It is apprehension of everyone else awakening to the verity they have concealed for so long. And the most arduous aspect for them is that they cannot impede this unraveling. Falsehoods possess an expiration date, whereas truth does not. They are cognizant that the clock is ticking, and each passing second renders their mask more difficult to maintain in place. They perceive the weight of exposure pressing down upon them, and it is corroding their confidence. Their trembling does not stem from your menaces. It stems from the realization that the menace was never you at all. The menace was the truth you embody and the fact that irrespective of how assiduously they attempt, they can no longer bend reality to conform to their falsehoods. That is why they will never entertain the notion of attempting to provoke you again. The cost is excessively high for once truth takes center stage. Falsehoods do not merely crumble, they vanish entirely. Fourthly, you have become their unwelcome instructor. They did not anticipate learning anything from you. In their estimation, you were supposed to be diminutive, manageable, something they could dominate and manipulate without consequence. However, life possesses a propensity for reversing fortunes. And now, without even raising your voice, you have become their lesson. Each misstep they perpetrated against you, each attempt to undermine or belittle you has metamorphosed into material for their own undoing. You did not need to lecture, argue, or substantiate a point. Your very existence is the curriculum, and they are compelled to attend whether they desire to do so or not. Each sleepless night, each anxious moment, each fear-driven thought they experience is a tutorial in humility for which they did not register. They are learning incrementally that the world does not yield to their schemes when they assail someone inviolable. Their own stratagems, their falsehoods, and their manipulations are now instructing them in the most challenging lesson of all. The more they attempt to exert control, the more they expose themselves. They are discovering the weight of actions they once deemed innocuous, and they are paying tuition in stress, paranoia, and regret. You did not need to orchestrate their suffering. They engendered it themselves. Your power does not reside in reprisal, it resides in their exposure. They are beholding consequences they never foresaw, compelled to confront their failures in real time, and it is molding them in ways they cannot disregard. The lesson is unambiguous and relentless. When an individual transgresses against the inviolable, when they test the incorrect person, the fallout is inevitable, and it invariably entails a cost. They are learning respect the arduous way because respect is not bestowed upon those who demand it. It is earned, and it is frequently imparted by consequences rather than by pronouncements. Your presence has become the instructor they did not desire but cannot escape. And each time they replay what they perpetrated, each time their conscience reminds them of the verity, they are once again seated in class learning the same lesson repetitively. Testing someone inviolable is a gamble that never concludes in their favor. Their apprehension, their anxiety, their sleepless nights. This is your silent syllabus, and they are destined to study it until they ultimately comprehend the profundity of what they challenged. Fifthly, you carry consequences they cannot calculate. Adversaries feel at ease when they can predict the ramifications of their actions. They comprehend human reactions. They are cognizant that anger, confrontation, calumny, and reprisal possess limits. However, with you, the equation shifts entirely. You carry consequences that cannot be measured by conventional precepts, actions that unfold with precision beyond human comprehension. They may plan, plot, and scheme, believing they can calculate every response. However, what you introduce into the world operates on a plane they cannot anticipate. That uncertainty terrifies them more than any disputation, insult, or physical confrontation ever could. The apprehension they experience does not concern what you will perpetrate in the moment. It concerns what life, fate, or cosmic law will perpetrate on your behalf, frequently without your intervention. They cannot measure timing, method, or magnitude. They cannot ascertain whether the impact will occur immediately or years hence, directly or indirectly, quietly or explosively. Every plan they devise entails a concealed risk they cannot foresee, a consequence lurking in shadows of whose existence they were unaware. That unknown is poison to their confidence, a perpetual reminder that they are never in complete control. The more they attempt to rationalize it, the more profound their apprehension becomes. They cannot predict the instruments of their downfall. Occasionally it is an individual. Occasionally it is a circumstance. Occasionally it is a concatenation of events that appears entirely coincidental but is perfectly aligned with the consequences of their actions. They may attempt to manipulate, suborn, or intimidate, but it is of no consequence. Your existence is governed by principles beyond human calculation, and that is precisely what keeps them awake at night. Apprehension of the unpredictable is far more potent than apprehension of the obvious. They are haunted by scenarios that may or may not transpire, replaying choices and outcomes within their minds, unable to rest, because each misstep against you constitutes a potential trigger for a reckoning they cannot evade. That dread is evidence of your power. You need not strike or substantiate anything. They are already cognizant of the weight of what they attempted, and the uncertainty of when or how consequences will strike constitutes the most terrifying punishment of all. Sixthly, they finally perceive that you were never playing the same game. They invariably presumed you played by their precepts, that you would react as everyone else does, angrily, defensively, desperately attempting to substantiate yourself. While they were engrossed in pettiness, attempting to manipulate, deceive, or ensnare you, you were operating on an entirely disparate plane. Your maneuvers were not predicated on competition, reprisal, or establishing dominance. They were predicated on purpose, strategy, and lucidity. Each action they undertook, each falsehood they disseminated, each scheme they plotted was being observed, noted, and catalogued without emotion or attachment. Your silence was not weakness. It was a form of power they never comprehended. They believed that reacting expeditiously, exhibiting anger or frustration would maintain your vulnerability. But they miscalculated. While they squandered energy on chaos, you were building resilience, documenting patterns, and preparing for the inevitable exposure of their schemes. Your composure was not emptiness. It was presence, focus, and unshakable awareness. Everything they believed they concealed from the world was already being recorded in your mind and in the manner in which you navigated existence. They did not perceive the invisible ledger being inscribed with each attempt to undermine you. Now they are beginning to perceive the cost of underestimating you. The evidence of their own actions, their falsehoods, their manipulations, their deceit, is embedded within the very reality they assisted in creating. The more they attempt to justify themselves or rewrite history, the clearer it becomes that the narrative is arrayed against them, inscribed not by pronouncements, but by consequences they never anticipated. Your silence has become more sonorous than any accusation, your composure stronger than any menace, and their downfall unavoidable because it is constructed on their own actions, observed and catalogued by someone they believed they could control. This is the moment when panic ensues. The moment they realize they were never playing the same game as you. They were playing a short-term, superficial strategy. You were playing the long-term game of truth, consequence, and presence. The patterns they believed were concealed are now exposed, and the very energy they attempted to manipulate has turned against them. They finally comprehend that what they deemed weakness was actually precision, and what they deemed ordinary was inviolable. And the apprehension that grips them now is not merely apprehension of you. It is apprehension of the reality they assisted in constructing and the fact that they underestimated a force they can no longer predict or control. Seventhly, they are apprehensive because you are no longer accessible. The apprehension they now experience emanates from a simple yet potent truth. You are no longer within their reach. Individuals who flourish on control subsist on accessibility. They necessitate the ability to manipulate, to provoke, to bend others to their will. They believed they could reach you at any time, distort your emotions, and draw you back into their chaos whenever it suited their purposes. However, now that accessibility is gone, you are no longer available to their schemes, and that lack of control terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. They flourished on the illusion that they could influence your choices, dictate your emotions, and gauge your reactions. Each falsehood they disseminated, each manipulation they attempted was predicated on the presumption that you could be reached, that they could draw you into their orbit. However, now the orbit has shifted and you have moved beyond it. The doors through which they previously traversed freely are now closed and the keys are gone. The sensation of being locked out, of possessing no influence, ignites an apprehension they have never truly experienced. This apprehension does not merely concern losing you. It concerns losing control over their own narrative. They counted on your reactions to validate their power, to affirm their schemes. Now, without accessibility to you, that validation is gone. They are compelled to confront the fact that the person they attempted to dominate cannot be reached, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be bent to their will. The panic emanates from the realization that their power was invariably dependent on your availability. And now, it is meaningless. Each attempt to regain control becomes a reminder of their helplessness. They pound on doors that will never open, replaying stratagems that no longer function and realizing that their influence has expired. The emptiness they experience is amplified because you are inviolable, unreachable, and firmly beyond the reach of their control. That is the form of apprehension that keeps them awake at night. The apprehension of irrelevance, the apprehension of loss, the apprehension of having underestimated someone who learned how to close the gates and shield themselves completely. In relinquishing accessibility to you, they are compelled to confront the ultimate verity. You are no longer theirs to touch, no longer theirs to manipulate, and no longer theirs to control. And that reality shakes them more profoundly than any menace ever could. Eighthly, their reputation is melting under your existence alone. They can hurl all the insults, disseminate all the rumors, and construct all the false narratives they desire, but none of it takes root when your existence continues to ascend above their chaos. They did not anticipate that your personal evolution alone would dismantle every falsehood they ever disseminated. You did not need to confront them, argue, or substantiate anything. Merely by existing, by thriving, you exposed the cracks in the narrative they attempted to inscribe about you. Their reputation, which they meticulously constructed on manipulation and deceit, begins to crumble the moment others perceive the verity reflected in your existence. Each success you attain, each step forward you undertake is a silent indictment of their falsehoods. What they stated about you, the manner in which they attempted to diminish you, becomes ludicrous in the light of your accomplishments. They cannot distort it, they cannot conceal it, and they cannot argue against it. Their apprehension is not engendered by what you perpetrate upon them. It is engendered by what you simply are. You are living evidence that their pronouncements were empty, their claims were false, and their attempts to control perception were futile. That apprehension is contagious. Those surrounding them begin to perceive the contrast between the image they have projected and the reality of your existence. Each time someone witnesses your success, integrity, or composure, it is akin to a fissure forming within their meticulously constructed facade. They are compelled to watch as their falsehoods collapse without anyone needing to utter a single word. And that is terrifying. They are not apprehensive of you assailing them. They are apprehensive of what your existence already reveals. That they have expended time undermining someone who was inviolable all along. The more you thrive, the more rapidly their credibility fades. Their calumny, their attempts to control narratives, their petty judgments, all of it loses weight against the undeniable evidence of your existence. What previously appeared to be power now appears to be weakness. What previously appeared to be influence now appears to be irrelevance. You did not need to expose them with a confrontation because exposure does not invariably necessitate pronouncements. Occasionally, personal evolution is more sonorous than any accusation, and survival speaks with a force that apprehension alone cannot silence. Your existence alone has become the evidence of their failure, the silent dismantling of their authority and the source of their deepest unease. They are watching, trembling, realizing that the reality of you is a menace that their falsehoods can never overcome. Ninthly, they have realized you cannot be baited into destruction. They believed they had you figured out. Each pronouncement, each maneuver, each reaction was anticipated and catalogued. They set traps designed to provoke anger, to elicit defensiveness, to push you into a corner where you would possess no recourse but to prove them incorrect. They depended on your emotions to validate their schemes, believing that the more you reacted, the more they controlled the narrative. However, you did not play into it. You did not accept the bait, and that is what terrifies them the most. Their entire strategy was constructed around the presumption that you were predictable, that your responses could be manipulated, and that your strength was conditional. By refusing to engage on their terms, you flipped the script entirely. The trap they so meticulously constructed became their own prison. Each insult, each falsehood, each manipulation now loops back on them because it no longer elicits the reaction for which they counted. They are trapped in the chaos they created, and they possess no means of escape. The apprehension emanates from the realization that they are now powerless within the cycle they initiated. While they believed they were the hunters, they are the ones ensnared in a web of their own design. Their attempts to provoke you into error, to draw you into a public confrontation, or to shame you into compliance all backfired. So to wrap it all up, remember this: the discomfort others feel around you when they've acted poorly isn't about you at all. It's about the truth you reflect back to them, the consequences they can't escape, and the realization that you're operating on a completely different level. You've already won simply by being your authentic, resilient self. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you experienced anything similar? Leave a comment below and let's get a conversation going. And if this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future insights and inspiration. I look forward to connecting with you all, ding with you all, ding with you all, ding with you all, ding. Welcome the designated anomalies. Rarity isn't merely valuable, it's a potent force, a volatile element. This isn't just an inspirational saying, it's an immutable law governing every sphere of existence, physical, spiritual, and even economic. Consider nature, where the rarest organisms are either deified, relentlessly pursued, or confined to sterile displays. Scientists estimate that the probability of someone possessing your precise DNA sequence, navigating your exact life trajectory, and bearing your unique spiritual signature is statistically astronomical, a figure exceeding 1 in 7 billion. And that's before factoring in the divine influence. But here's the arresting truth: being an exceptional individual isn't solely about inherent uniqueness. It's about embodying the system error, the plot twist that confounds expectation, the human embodiment of encountering a talking raven in the dead of night. Impossible to disregard and just unnerving enough to ignite unease. Some will label you gifted, others eccentric. A select few will even deem you dangerous, and to a certain extent they will all be accurate. Because you chosen catalysts, you don't just stand out, you stand apart, a singular force. You are a walking paradox imbued with an ancient wisdom that renders you impervious to modern deception, yet possessing a futuristic vision that defies the constraints of outdated structures. Today we will dismantle the romanticized notion of being extraordinary, exposing the stark, unfiltered realities that define what it truly means to be one in a billion. No platitudes, no saccharine assurances, only 14 penetrating, challenging, thought-provoking truths that will illuminate why the world often struggles to comprehend your essence, and why that struggle is likely to persist. First, your existence was never intended for mass assimilation. You were never designed to be easily processed or conveniently categorized. Society has been conditioned to favor what can be swiftly labeled, readily understood, and neatly compartmentalized. But you defy these preset categories. Your persona, your convictions, your perspective on life, they resist conformity to familiar patterns. This isn't a contrived effort to be different. It stems from the inherent depth and complexity of your being. Qualities that cannot be diluted for mass consumption. The stark reality is that most individuals are unwilling to invest the effort required to truly understand another person. They seek superficial connections, predictable reactions, and commodified personalities. You are not wired for such superficiality. You possess a depth of character in a world that celebrates shallowness. You possess layers that demand patience to unravel, and not everyone possesses the discipline or spiritual maturity to progress beyond the surface. To the untrained eye, you might appear overwhelming or overly intense, but this is merely because they are accustomed to fleeting indulgences, whereas you represent a complete, nourishing experience. Your presence compels others to confront more than just you. It forces them to confront themselves. This is the source of the discomfort. They cannot assimilate you without also experiencing their own insecurities, contradictions, and repressed truths. For some, this is invigorating. For others, it is infuriating. Consequently, rather than acknowledging their inability to fully embrace you, they attempt to diminish you into something manageable. But the divine does not create manageable spirits. You were not dispatched here to conform to the expectations of the majority. You were crafted for those rare individuals willing to grapple with truth, to wrestle with their own inner selves, and to remain open to embracing what eludes their complete comprehension. This is why you often experience feelings of misunderstanding or isolation. Because the average person lacks the skills to navigate a spirit such as yours without undermining its inherent essence. And if you have ever attempted to render yourself more palatable, you have likely discovered that it is a futile endeavor. Your authenticity is too powerful to be permanently contained. Being incompatible with everyone is not a defect. It is confirmation that you are operating on a wavelength that only a select few can perceive. Those who can will regard you as the invaluable asset you truly are. Those who cannot will devote their lives to rationalizing their inability to retain you. Regardless, your intrinsic worth remains constant, surpassing mass consumption, defying imitation, and exceeding measure. Second, you are the anomaly in the system that validates the inherent flaws in the code. Every system you have encountered, whether explicit or implicit, operates on a set of rules. Families adhere to them, workplaces are governed by them, cultures are defined by them. These rules function like background programs dictating what is deemed acceptable, what is considered normal, and what is perceived as possible. Most individuals accept these rules without question, conditioned to believe that the status quo is immutable. But your life serves as irrefutable proof that the program is not flawless. You are the anomaly that exposes the vulnerabilities of the code. From the outset, you functioned differently than expected. Where others complied without critical thought, you questioned. Where others maintained silence to preserve harmony, you spoke out. Where others accepted limitations, you pushed beyond them. This was not mere rebellion for its own sake. It was your spirit's refusal to operate on a defective operating system. This caused you to stand apart in ways that were impossible to conceal, even if you desired to. The crucial aspect of being an anomaly is that you shatter the illusion of the system's infallibility. When you achieve success in areas deemed impossible, or when you dismantle structures considered unbreakable, you compel others to acknowledge that the conventional way of doing things may not represent absolute truth, but rather entrenched tradition. And tradition, once scrutinized, begins to lose its grip. This is why systems, whether social or spiritual, often seek to neutralize individuals like you, not because you are inherently disruptive or outspoken, but because your very existence challenges their claims of absoluteness. Some individuals will harbor resentment towards you for this. They have constructed their identities, their sense of security, and even their moral frameworks around the rules of the system. When you effortlessly circumvent these rules, it can feel like a direct assault on the foundations of their lives. But your purpose was never to foster complacency. Your purpose was to reveal underlying flaws. And that revelation can be painful. You don't merely challenge the rules, you challenge the very source of the rules. You peel back the curtain, exposing that what was once considered immutable was often the product of human construction, fear-based thinking, or the desire to protect vested interests. This is why your kind is so rare. You are not here to be absorbed into the system. You are here to rewrite the code, and once an anomaly is detected, the system can never feign perfection again. Third, you exude an atmosphere, not just a personality. Some individuals enter a room and seamlessly blend into the background. Others walk in and immediately transform the ambiance without uttering a single word. You belong to the latter category. What emanates from you is not merely personality or charisma, it is an atmosphere. It is the confluence of your energy, your experiences, your convictions, and your spiritual alignment, all moving in unison. It's not a conscious performance, it's an inherent quality. People react to you before they consciously understand why. Some are drawn in, others are unsettled. Both responses stem from the fact that the space surrounding you vibrates at a frequency that either resonates with their inner truth or disrupts their established comfort zone. Your presence amplifies the qualities already present within another person. If they possess inner peace, you intensify it. If they harbor concealed guilt, you expose it without conscious effort. This explains why you often observe altered behavior around you, softened tones, acts of kindness, or sudden defensiveness. Your atmosphere is molded by the trials you have overcome, the pain you have endured, and the wisdom you have acquired. Each challenge has left an indelible mark, but instead of engendering bitterness, it has cultivated depth. Every lesson learned has permeated not only your intellect but also the very energy you project into every space you occupy. This is why even strangers sometimes treat you with unusual reverence or suspicion. They are not responding to your physical appearance, your vocal tone, or even your words. They are responding to the essence you carry. This also elucidates why environments cannot sustain you for extended periods if they are not aligned with your spirit. When your personal atmosphere surpasses the environment you enter, one of two outcomes will occur. The space will either adapt to accommodate you or it will resist you until you depart. Both outcomes validate the same fundamental truth: you are not neutral. You shift the equilibrium in every room you enter. While some may attempt to emulate this effect, it cannot be manufactured. Atmosphere arises from authenticity, from navigating seasons that have compelled you to ground yourself in your true identity. It cannot be purchased, taught, or borrowed. It is earned through embracing life fully and refusing to compromise your core essence. You do not simply participate in an environment, you redefine it. That is why you can never be merely another face in the crowd. Your presence is the climate, and everyone else must adapt to it. Fourth, your spirit is an unrefined weapon. Most individuals are molded early in life to conform to predetermined roles. They are taught how to think, how to behave, and how to limit themselves so they can seamlessly fit into the societal framework. Their rough edges are smoothed out, their passion is subdued to a manageable level. They become predictable, and predictability is easily controlled. But you never fully succumb to this process. You did not allow the world to finish shaping you into something safe. Your spirit remains untamed, passionate, and unrefined. This untamed nature is not recklessness, it is power that has not been domesticated. You have not been molded into a shape that can be easily labeled or comfortably stored away. That is why people struggle to categorize you. One moment you are contemplative and observant. The next you are dissecting falsehoods with incisive precision. You do not always adhere to expected patterns, and this unpredictability keeps your adversaries on edge. The most potent weapon in the arsenal of your enemy is anticipation. If they can predict your movements, they can prepare for them. But when your spirit moves in ways that defy conventional human patterns, they cannot anticipate your next strike. It's akin to battling an opponent whose range, weight, and reach are shrouded in mystery. They cannot discern your limitations because you refuse to operate within them. Your unrefined state also signifies that you are continually evolving. Every battle, every challenge, every season serves to sharpen you in real time. You are not a finished artifact residing in a display case. You are a living weapon still being heated in the forge, still being shaped by the hands of the divine. This is a frightening prospect for anyone who underestimates you, because if you are this formidable now, what will you become when your full potential is unleashed? This is why some individuals attempt to force you into premature definitions. If they can name you, they can confine you. If they can confine you, they can control you. But the truth is, no one can fully assess you. Yet not even yourself, and that is your strategic advantage. The most perilous weapon is not the one that everyone has studied. It is the one they have never encountered and cannot comprehend until it has already struck. Fifth, you outgrew the stage before they even completed its construction. Many individuals devote their entire lives to anticipating a defining moment, the breakthrough opportunity, the event that propels them into the spotlight. They rehearse for it, prepare for it, and construct their identities around the expectation of one day gracing that stage. But you perceived something they overlooked. You recognized early on that the stage they were erecting was not designed to accommodate someone like you. It was too confined, too restrictive, and too scripted to encompass the breadth of your purpose. This was not arrogance. It was clarity. You innately understood that your calling was not destined to be confined to someone else's vision of success. While they meticulously ensured the perfection of the lights and curtains, you were realizing that remaining would ultimately necessitate diminishing yourself to conform to their script. And you were not created to portray a role written by individuals who lack comprehension of the depth of your mission. Departing before the applause is one of the most challenging actions to undertake. The temptation to remain, at least to garner some recognition, is powerful. But you grasped a concept that eludes most applause can be a gilded cage. It can tether you to a setting that appears to represent success, but subtly suffocates your true calling. By choosing to walk away, you averted being trapped in a version of yourself that would have appeased others while betraying your innermost purpose. And here is the crux of the matter: people rarely comprehend such departures. They will attribute it to fear, impatience, or even failure. But what they fail to perceive is that you were not departing for something lesser. You were departing for something that did not yet exist. You were departing to construct a platform capable of bearing the full weight of your voice, your vision, and your inherent power. The truth is, if you had remained, you might have enjoyed fleeting acclaim, but ultimately faded into obscurity. By departing, you positioned yourself for an impact that will transcend the fleeting attention spans of crowds. You did not simply bypass their stage. You ventured forth and built your own arena. And when your moment arrives, it will not be about applause. It will be about profound alignment. Sixth, you inherited battles that did not originate with you but will culminate with you. Certain struggles in your life bear no relation to your personal choices. They did not begin in your lifetime, nor did they stem from your missteps. Some of the resistance you have encountered was bequeathed to you like an unwelcome inheritance woven into the tapestry of your family's history long before your arrival. These are the battles that have silently eroded the vitality of your lineage for generations. They manifest as pattern cycles and unspoken curses that are universally sensed but seldom articulated. You did not choose these conflicts, but you were chosen for them, not because you are the most agreeable or the most willing, but because you possess the capabilities to dismantle what others could only withstand. Where previous generations learned to endure the struggle, you have been granted the discernment to dismantle its very foundation. Your clarity empowers you to perceive what others could not, the root of the conflict, the true adversary concealed behind distractions and the falsehoods that perpetuated its existence. This is why your life has felt more burdensome than most. You are not simply shouldering your own struggles. You are also carrying unresolved assignments from those who preceded you. The burden is disproportionate yet purposeful. The armor you have been compelled to cultivate, resilience, discernment, spiritual acuity, was not solely intended for your personal battles. It was forged so that you could terminate the conflicts that have silently depleted your family's potential for centuries. And when you engage in these battles, the resistance can be formidable. The enemy recognizes that your victory will not only liberate you, but also every generation that follows. This is why the warfare feels more personal, more relentless, and more exhausting for you than it ever seemed for others. You are the turning point. You are the breach in the dam. Ending a generational conflict necessitates more than mere strength. It requires refusing to perpetuate the mistakes that sustained it, even when those mistakes feel familiar and comfortable. It entails establishing boundaries that others never dared to establish. It means rejecting what everyone else tolerated. It means relinquishing agreements that you never formally ratified but were born into. You are the final combatant, not because you were the only one willing to fight, but because you are the first one capable of achieving victory. When you bring this to its conclusion, the narrative of your lineage will be irrevocably transformed. Seventh, your mind houses maps that others cannot even fathom. People often offer advice with benevolent intentions. They draw from their personal experiences, their successes and failures, their understanding of the world's workings. But such guidance is inherently limited. It can only encompass terrain that they have personally traversed, and your life was never intended to adhere to the paths they know. You were born bearing blueprints for landscapes that do not even appear on their maps. This is why their advice sometimes feels ill-suited, even when it is offered with affection. They are providing directions based on routes that lead elsewhere entirely. They cannot visualize the terrain you are navigating because it remains undiscovered. And you are not here to be a mere tourist, you are here to be a cartographer. That role can be isolating when there is no established path before you. There is no one to precede you and declare, "This is the way." You must rely on your own discernment, your own communion with the divine, your own ability to discern signs that others overlook. While they require road signs and validation, you are guided by an instinct sharpened through adversity, by a vision that transcends human wisdom. This also explains why your decisions often perplex people. They cannot comprehend why you would abandon what appears safe, why you would decline opportunities that they would covet, or why you would embrace risks that seem reckless from their perspective. What they fail to grasp is that their safe route might represent your dead end. You are not disregarding wisdom. You are following a different kind of map, one with destinations that require audacity to even name. Bearing unseen blueprints also means that you sometimes perceive danger long before others do. You recognize when a familiar route is on the verge of collapse. You sense when a promising shortcut is in reality a trap. That foresight is not paranoia. It is a gift, one that has shielded you from calamities that others have blindly stumbled into. Ultimately, those who doubted you may one day solicit the directions that they once attempted to provide you, because when you complete the charting of your course, you will not only have survived the unknown, you will have crafted maps that others will rely upon for years to come. Eighth, you expose the illusion of their authority. Some individuals believe that their power derives from titles, positions, or the capacity to control others. They are accustomed to issuing instructions and witnessing unquestioning obedience. They construct their sense of self-importance around the notion that they possess the authority to determine who rises, who falls, who is included, and who is excluded. But when they encounter you, cracks begin to appear in that framework. Your resilience forces them to question the extent of their true control. You do not behave like someone awaiting permission. You do not operate as if your destiny is confined to someone else's filing cabinet. You persist in moving forward regardless of their approval, regardless of whether they open doors for you or keep them firmly shut. And when they observe this, it becomes evident that their authority was never as absolute as they imagine. You are not challenging them through overt rebellion or direct confrontation. You are engaging in something far more subversive. You are living proof that they cannot thwart what the divine has ordained. This quiet defiance exposes the limitations of human control. It reveals that the majority of what people term power is in actuality influence predicated on compliance, and you are not inherently predisposed to blind compliance. Your ability to endure, adapt, and continue progressing in the face of opposition demonstrates to all onlookers that their position does not render them the gatekeepers of your life. That realization can destabilize the foundations of those who have constructed their identities around being in command. Sometimes this exposure causes them to intensify their efforts. They may strive harder to obstruct you, to make an example of you, or to discredit you in order to deter others from following your lead. But irrespective of their actions, you persist in showing up, and your very existence continues to demonstrate that the ultimate source of your provision, opportunity, and advancement lies not with them. It is not about disrespecting individuals in positions of power. It is about refusing to grant them a role in your life that they were never assigned by the divine. The moment they realize that you will fulfill your purpose with or without their validation, the illusion shatters. And once that illusion is dispelled, everyone witnessing the event begins to discern the truth. Authority devoid of divine sanction is merely a title. Ninth, you compel hidden loyalties to surface. You do not need to level accusations, initiate arguments, or concoct elaborate schemes to ascertain who is truly in your corner. All that is required is to remain authentic. Your authenticity possesses the power to reveal people's true colors, not in theory, but in practice. When you live without pandering to the expectations of others, it disrupts the comfort of those whose loyalty is contingent upon your conformity. Some individuals attach themselves to you for the advantages they derive: access, security, influence, or even the sense of control they obtain from being in your proximity. As long as you serve their needs, their loyalty appears unwavering. But the instant your growth, boundaries, or calling necessitates an adjustment on their part, the cracks begin to appear. Suddenly the support diminishes, the tone alters, and their proclamation of being always there for you becomes suspiciously conditional. Your presence functions like a spotlight. It unnerves pretenders because it becomes challenging to feign loyalty when one cannot manipulate the individual they are attempting to deceive. Without your conscious effort, situations arise that expose motives. A challenge emerges and some vanish. An opportunity arises and some compete instead of celebrating. A shift in your path occurs and some harbor resentment instead of offering support. This revelation can be painful. You may have believed that certain individuals were bound to you by love or genuine respect, only to discover that they were tethered to the benefits of your presence. But in truth, this is a gift. It is preferable to know who will stand by you when it costs them something, rather than being surrounded by individuals who would disappear the moment you cease to be useful. And the process works both ways. Your presence also draws genuinely loyal individuals into the open. Those who are willing to stand with you without expectation of personal gain reveal themselves when it matters most. These relationships may be fewer, but they are more resilient, more profound, and more enduring. By simply existing in your truth, you strip away the disguises that others conceal themselves behind. You do not need to force their hand. Your life accomplishes the task. And once you have witnessed someone's true level of loyalty, you can never again be misled by their words. So to sum it all up, being one in a billion isn't some fluffy ideal. It's a powerful, challenging reality. It's about owning your unique code, rewriting the system, radiating your authentic atmosphere, wielding your unrefined spirit, forging your own path, fighting inherited battles, and trusting your inner maps. It's about disrupting false authority, revealing true loyalties, and ultimately living a life that defies easy categorization. I hope these truths resonated with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated most? Have you experienced any of these challenges? Share your insights. Ask a question or just join the conversation in the comments below. And if you found this thought-provoking and want to delve deeper into topics like this, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Let's continue this journey of self-discovery together.